This is for the part of you that keeps giving a little more than you meant to. The part that notices, quietly, that you have started editing yourself again, your tone, your needs, your boundaries, just enough to keep her calm, just enough to keep her close. You tell yourself it is love, or patience, or maturity. But somewhere underneath that story is a familiar tension, a tightness in the chest when you say yes and mean maybe. A strange emptiness after you've been everything she needed. You bend over backwards just to please her and stay seen and needed. Not because you are weak, not because you lack intelligence or awareness, but because something old in you has learned that connection comes at a cost. This video is not here to accuse you, and it is not here to crown women as villains in some crude way. It is here to sit with the uncomfortable truth that something is happening between you and her, something you are participating in without fully seeing it. You may already sense it, that quiet resentment that creeps in when you do not feel met, that confusion about how you ended up here again, slowly disappearing while calling it devotion. Nothing is wrong with you for being here, but there is something worth looking at, and it deserves honesty, not judgment. At some point, often early, you learned that being yourself was risky, not dangerous in a dramatic way, just subtly unsafe. You noticed that approval arrived when you were agreeable, when you were useful, when you anticipated what others needed before they had to ask. So you adapted, not consciously. You became good at reading the room, good at softening your edges, good at being the man who does not cause trouble. This was not manipulation. It was intelligence. A sensitive nervous system learning how to stay connected. Later in life, this skill becomes a curse disguised as charm. You bring it into relationships with women. You listen deeply. You show up. You give. And slowly, without realizing it, you confuse love with self-abandonment. You think intimacy means proximity, being close, being needed, being important. So you stay close, even when it costs you your own center. There is a moment in these dynamics that is rarely named. The moment when her emotional state starts to define your sense of worth. If she is happy, you feel relaxed. If she is distant, anxious energy floods your body. If she is upset, you scramble internally to fix it. You tell yourself you are being supportive. But underneath, something more fragile is at play. You are no longer relating to her as a separate human. You are relating to her moods as a referendum on your value. This is where many women, consciously or not, begin to hold power. Not because they set out to manipulate, but because you handed the steering wheel over quietly. Some women sense this. They feel how responsive you are, how easily you move when they pull emotionally, and the dynamic shifts. Her disappointment becomes a weapon without her having to lift it. Your fear of losing connection does the work for her. In these relationships, there is often an unspoken agreement. You will provide emotional stability, reassurance, availability. In return, you will be chosen. The problem is that the contract keeps changing, and you are the only one still trying to honor it. You give more presence, more patience, more understanding. She gives you uncertainty, mixed signals, tests you never agreed to take. From her side, this can feel intoxicating. To be desired so deeply, to feel so central to another person's inner world. From your side, it feels like walking on shifting ground. You work harder to stay close. You analyze conversations after they end. You rehearse honesty in your head and then swallow it. You tell yourself you are being reasonable, but the body knows when something is off. Manipulation is rarely dramatic. It does not always look like cruelty or intent. Often it sounds like disappointment, silence. withdrawal of warmth, a sigh when you finally express a need, a subtle shift when you stop performing. For a people-pleasing man, this lands deeply because your nervous system hears it as danger, as loss. Some women learn, often unconsciously, that this works, that withholding affection gets results, that emotional distance pulls you closer. This is not a story of evil women and innocent men. It is a story of two wounded systems colliding. Her fear of being alone meets your fear of being unwanted. And the dance continues. From inside the dynamic, it feels like love, because your identity is entangled with being needed. If you stop pleasing, who are you? If you disappoint her, do you still exist? This is why insight alone does not free you. You can understand all of this intellectually and still stay, because the bond is not maintained by logic. It is maintained by fear and hope braided together. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow, the parts of us we disown. For many men, their anger, selfishness, and boundaries live there. Alan Watts spoke about how the ego clings to roles: the good man, the provider, the one who understands. You cling not because you are foolish, but because letting go feels like losing yourself. There is a grief that lives underneath people-pleasing, the grief of the unlived self, the version of you that would say no without explanation, that would want something and not apologize for it, that would walk away when the ground felt unstable. You may notice it in moments of quiet resentment, or fantasies of disappearing, or sudden exhaustion with her needs. This is not you becoming bitter. It is you becoming aware. Your body has been keeping score, long after your mind decided to be understanding. Real intimacy does not require you to shrink. It does not demand constant adjustment. It allows friction, difference, disappointment. But this kind of connection can feel unfamiliar, even boring, because it does not activate the same nervous system highs. When you stop people-pleasing, some women will lose interest, not because you became worse, but because the dynamic changed. This is where many men return to old patterns, choosing intensity over truth, choosing familiarity over self-respect. There is a quiet fear here that without pleasing, there is nothing left. But beneath the performance is a grounded presence, a man who does not chase emotional weather, who can sit in himself without disappearing. This is not about becoming cold or dominant or withholding. It is about becoming real, and realness always changes the room. If any of this stirred something in you, that is enough for now. You do not need to fix it tonight. You do not need to confront anyone or rewrite your life. Just notice. Notice where you leave yourself to stay connected. Notice how your body responds when you imagine not doing that. There is nothing wrong with your sensitivity, nothing broken in your desire to love deeply. But love that costs you your center is not devotion. It is survival dressed up as romance. You are allowed to exist without being needed. You are allowed to be chosen without performing. Sit with that. Let it unsettle you gently. And remember, awareness is not an attack on who you have been. It is an invitation to come home.